Welcome to Candlewick Library. I'm Cheryl, and today I'm sharing my goals and my reading journal for 2025. It's been really interesting this year watching other people's goal videos for 2025 because I have found that there are quite a few of us that are feeling the same way. And what I mean by that is I have heard quite a few people saying that they wanted to read less in 2025. And that sounds like such a counterproductive thing for those of us that love to read. But that is what I have been feeling too. And so this year, at this point, I've read, I think it's 165 books. And my goal was 100. I used to read between 40 and 60 books a year. But when I started homeschooling, because I was reading so many books aloud with my children, that number just shot up. And then since starting YouTube, I found that I've been more driven to read more and more. The readathons are happening, and I love taking part in readathons and reading challenges. And so once I write it down, I want to accomplish it. It's hard not to sometimes read it when I don't feel like it. And I've noticed that about myself, that there have been months when I really want to do something else, but I'm like, oh, but I have to finish this book. And I do not want reading to become a chore for me. I want it to continue to be my favorite hobby and the thing that I love doing. And so for 2025, I had already decided that I wanted to read less. I'm still putting 100 as my goal because I feel like that is a very realistic goal for me between homeschooling and my own reading. I might go over it again, but I don't want to go as high as I did this year. And basically by saying 100 and I want to read less, then it can even be under 100. And I really am not going to hold myself to it this year. But what it means is that I want to make sure that every time I sit down to read, it's only because I want to and not because I'm pushing for a goal. And also, if I am taking part in readathons or reading challenges, if I end up not completing it, that I'm just not going to care, that I'm already going to have that mindset. Another thing that drove me this past year was my TBR, my unread shelf. I was trying to get it under 100 books on there, and that is still going to be one of my goals this year. But I'm not going to be so obsessed with that, where I feel like I have to read these books off this shelf. And instead, a couple of people on here have told me that they love having a lot of books on their unread shelf because they feel like they have their own little store. And I need to start looking at it that way, where if all the bookstores shut down and I could never get another book, at least I have a lot of books still that I could read. And so I'm going to try to have that attitude toward those so that during those readathons, when I do try to pick books off my unread shelf, that I'm not feeling like I have to read something that I may or may not be in the mood for. My first goal is read less. I also want to do less readathons, but this is something that I don't, just like I don't want to be holding myself to a certain amount of books every month and, being hard on myself if I don't get to certain books. I also don't want to be being hard on myself if I decide that a readathon comes along that sounds really fun and I decide to do it. And I had thought that I wanted to do that less. If something comes along I want to do, I'm going to do it. And I guess that's the kind of theme of this, is making reading just be exactly what I want it to be. Reading the books I want to read, having fun with it, joining in on the readathons I want to, not joining in on the ones that I don't feel like I can do or that I'm not as interested in, even if I love the person doing it. Because I feel like that's kind of a trap I've fallen into, where I want to do all of the challenges and all the readathons because I love all the people that are hosting them and I want to support everybody. But sometimes it can be too much. And so that's kind of how I felt in December, where everybody was doing so many videos and I couldn't keep up with them. And I felt guilty about it because I wanted to be supporting everybody's videos. And at some point I had to decide that there was only a certain amount I could watch. If I still wanted to be doing family activities, watching Christmas movies, all of that. And so I want to take that into 2025. I will participate when I really, really want to and when I can. And if I can't, then I'm not going to let myself feel bad or guilty about that. That probably sounds so stupid to people who aren't a type A personality like I am. I definitely do have that part of my personality that makes me feel like I need to do all of the things. And so I want to take that down a little bit. Also here on YouTube, I will be doing less videos. I will probably only be putting out one a week starting in 2025. There will be weeks when it's 2. There might be weeks when it's more than 2. But for the most part in 2025, I will be putting out 1 video a week. And that will help me to keep one of my goals in my regular non-reading life, which is balance. I feel like my balance of YouTube and reading has started to kind of outweigh the other things in my life. And I need to make sure, again, that I'm only doing what I really, really want to do and what I feel like I can do without it affecting anything else. It hasn't affected anything else negatively but I just don't want it to ever get to a point where it does, where I feel burnt out not wanting to make videos or not wanting to be on YouTube or not wanting to read books. So before it gets to that point, I want to make sure that I'm being proactive and making it something where I'm not feeling obligated to have to do something, but I can if I want to. So a lot less of everything. My second goal is to finish the Harry Potter series. I started that in 2024. I wanted to read the whole series again, and I only got through book 4. I just finished book 4 in December. I am reading them as I put together a curriculum for my daughter. And I don't need books 5, 6, or 7 until next fall. So I will probably take my time reading them throughout the spring and into the summer. I also want to do the classes that House of Humane Letters does for those last books. And I may wait to read them until those classes are live so that it will all be fresh in my mind as I make the curriculum. Since I didn't do those last 3 books, those are on my goal list for this year. Again, I do have my Goodreads for 100 books, and I do believe that'll be pretty easy for me to get to. I have my Agatha Christie project. That is a goal, to read all of the books that I talked about in that video, and then all of the books that my mom and I have chosen for our Inklings group for 2025. A goal from last year that I'm continuing into 2025 is to be consistent with my reading journal. I've really enjoyed looking back on it. In 2024, I'm going to have a video showing that journal and whether I accomplish those goals, but I've really enjoyed doing that. And so I have that as a goal for 2025 as well, to be consistent with my reading journal. My next goal is having a reading retreat. I hear about people doing those kind of things a lot, where they go off by themselves to just read or write somewhere. And then I've seen people on YouTube that go with friends, and they go off somewhere and their whole goal is like book shopping and book reading and just being with somebody for a few days. And I've really wanted to do something similar to that. So I asked my mom if she would be interested in doing an Inklings retreat. And that would just be she and I, and we would go to the mountains and stay somewhere for a few days and have a few days of reading and just chatting about books, going to bookstores, things like that. So we will be doing that this year. My next goal is to be consistent with my Bible studies, and I'll be doing a video on what Bible studies I'm doing in 2025. And then last year, my goal was to do 90% of the yearly reading challenges that I had picked. And so I wanted to have each one up to 90% completion. And so this year I actually put that at 50 because I have a few more reading challenges that last the whole year than I did last year, but I also want less pressure. And so I know that I can finish every single one of them up to 50%. So I put that as the goal. And then I did add having my unread shelf as under 100 as a goal again. It's one that I'm not going to worry about too much if I don't do it. Another reading goal that I have that I forgot to write down is that I want to read at least one nonfiction every month. I love nonfiction. I read a lot of it. And I was waiting for somebody to make a yearly challenge that was a nonfiction one, but I haven't seen anything like that was something that matched the nonfiction I want to read. I may in the future make something like that, but I'm not sure. But at this point, just reading on my own, I want to make sure I'm reading at least one nonfiction every month. So I'm going to be doing a flip through in a few minutes of my reading journal, and you'll be able to see all of the pages that I have set up in here for the reading challenges and what I'm going to be doing this year. But I am going to talk a little bit about reading challenges. So with the readathons that I have done every month, usually I try to pick a different book for every prompt, and most of the time from my unread shelf. But with the yearly reading challenges, it's almost a game to me to see how far I can make a book go. So last year I had 10 reading challenges. This year it's about the same. There's a few that I'm not doing in 2025, and I have new ones that I'm doing instead. But there still is a couple more than I had last year. And if I read a ton in the month, then I will have a different one for each challenge. But usually there's one book that at least goes for a few challenges. So when you see all of the reading challenges, it's really not that I'm going to be reading that many books every single month. That would be too much. But I also have fun doing it. I really enjoy the yearly reading challenges, even more than the readathons. And so I wanted to make sure that I did as many of them as possible. There were a few that I really liked and wanted to do, but I didn't see how I would fit them in. I don't read as much fantasy as I used to. I don't read very much science fiction. So there were a few challenges that were themed around those things. And I just decided that I wouldn't add those into my book. So if you have a yearly reading challenge and you don't see it on this, that is why. It just wasn't going to fit into my reading goals this year. So I've already talked about my Agatha Christie project. That is the first challenge for myself this year. That and my American literature course. Thankfully, they're not matched up to months. I will read them as I can. I will sprinkle them in months when I don't have as much to read or when I'm in the mood for one of them. and just go slowly through them throughout the whole year. I had been thinking for a long time about rereading the Anne of Green Gables series in 2025 and had decided that that was something I was going to do. In fact, I got a sticker that had all of the books from the series on it because I was planning on doing that. And then I was hoping to reread a few other Lucy Montgomery books in 2025. And in November, when there was the Ellen Montgomery readathon, I really hated that I didn't take part in it. And that was another one of those times when I was putting a little bit of guilt on myself for not having taken part in something I wanted to take part in. And especially with it being Lucy Montgomery, I just couldn't believe that I didn't get any. But I had so many books to read, and I loved the books I read in November. And so that, again, that's what I'm talking about. I want to not hold myself to those kind of things. But because of that, that was another reason it was in my brain. I really want to read Lucy Montgomery in 2025. So when Chantel announced that she was doing a Year of Maud, a Lucy Montgomery read-along, I was so on board. And so this is one of the challenges I will for sure be taking part in, and reading the whole Anne of Green Gables series throughout the year, as well as a few other Lucy Montgomery books. And then Anne at In Search of Wonder, she announced her Reading the Classics 2025. And I really love this idea. I read a lot of classics, but I also want to make sure that I'm continuing to do that because there's so many new books that are coming out that I'm enjoying and want to read, but I also don't want to stop reading classics. And so I really loved that she had a challenge especially for this. And it also is so fun. She has 3 levels to it. One is a prompt every month, and then the level 2 is a scavenger hunt in those books, and then level 3 is a life prompt basically. So in January, for example, a book from your physical TBR. So that'll be pretty easy. And then it has a list of 3 things for the scavenger hunt, and then the challenge is to not buy any books. And that was something I wanted to have as a challenge for myself in January anyway, so that worked out perfectly. So I am going to be taking part in that challenge as well. And then Katie at Paperbacks and Ponytails announced her Princess Bride-a-thon. And I love Princess Bride. I loved the book and I loved the movie. And I thought that sounded like so much fun. And she has 16 prompts, but they don't align to a month. So you can just do them as you do them. And that's something I looked for in a lot of the challenges this year. I have a few of them that definitely have the monthly prompts, but a lot of them are just fill out as you go. Chantel's Read Your Bookshelf challenge this year also has a prompt for every month, but they're very easy prompts that you could make fit and be very creative with. And so that will be an easy one to do. And I knew I wanted to do that one as well. One that was a very last minute addition to my goals, my reading challenges for the year, the Anne at In Search of Wonder and Charlene at Coffee and a Book, that they put together a celebration all year long for Jane Austen's 250th birthday. And they picked a book or 2 every single month that you can read or choose from. In fact, some of the months have 3 books. And so I did make a spread in my reading journal for this challenge because I want to take part in it a little bit, but I know already that I'm not going to be reading a book every month. I know for sure that I want to read Emma because I've been wanting to reread that for a long time because I didn't like it when I first read it. I want to revisit it. I know I'm going to be doing that. I know I'm going to be reading one of the January ones. Other than that, I'm not sure. So I'm just going to have it in here, and each month I can look at whatever it is they're reading and decide whether I want to do it or not. I have never taken part in the 52 book challenge before, and this year I saw their list for it and I thought it sounded like a lot of fun. And again, this is something that isn't monthly. It just has 52 prompts and you can just mark them off as you go. And since I know I will at least read 52 books, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be able to mark off a lot of these. And so I thought that would be a fun challenge to do throughout the year. Reshelving Alexandria also has a challenge this year, and it is all family themed, and they have a bunch of different groups in this challenge. So everybody in the family could have their own if they wanted to. There's one for children, one for teens, a couple of different ones for adults, one for read alouds. And I chose in my reading journal to write down all of the prompts for the teen one because it has 20 prompts and they're all family related. Sibling dynamics, found families, generational stories, family feuds, adopted or blended families, and so things like that. And then the read alouds also had 10 prompts for read alouds that are also those kind of books. And this is not something that I'm holding myself to that I have to do every single prompt, but it's something that I wanted to use for my own reading where I could be more aware of families in the books I'm reading and mark those off. But then also when I'm planning read alouds for my daughter and I in homeschool, that I can also kind of keep that theme and look for that because I think that's a really fun idea. And then Jeanette at Jane Reads, she announced her Christian fiction challenge, and that one does have a prompt every single month. I don't know if I'll be able to do it every month, but I thought that would be really fun because I am reading more Christian fiction than I used to. And then Alma at Alma's Book Journey, she announced her reading challenge that is different centuries and different decades. And I really loved the idea of that, but I also knew that I didn't want to do it every single month where there was one decade and one century that I had to read from. And so I made pages that just have the decades that she chose and the centuries that she chose. And throughout the year, as I read them, if I read something in one of those, I will mark it off just to see how many decades and centuries I read from. And then of course I have the Inklings Literary Society with my mom, and we read 6 books a year. And then we also, this past year, we did this, and this year we're going to be doing it as well, where we had some kind of a book or Bible study that we were doing together. Last year it was a book. This year it's going to be a year-long devotional study. And then I'll have my own personal Bible study, and I'll do a video on that as well. And then in my reading journal, I also have listed all of the episodes of the Literary Life podcast that I want to listen to in 2025, and I want to continue listening to them. So you'll see all of those in my reading journal. So I will go ahead and end this now. Those are all of the goals, all of the reading challenges I want to do. Again, the main thing this year is not putting as much pressure on myself and really enjoying my time reading and my time on YouTube. I would love to hear if you have any of these same goals or what your goals are. And I'll go ahead now and I will cut to showing you my reading journal for 2025. I'm going to do a flip through of my 2025 reading journal. You really can't do that much with this page, so I just did a little design with a quote. Same with right here. Got my table of contents, my goals, which I will go through on camera. And then this is where the reading challenges that I talked about start. So first I have my Goodreads number, my Agatha Christie project. So these are all of the books that I talked about in that video that I'm planning on reading. A Year of Maud, Lucy Montgomery read along. And then this is the part where I messed up, and this is kind of funny. So the Reading the Classics 2025, this is from Anne at In Search of Wonder, and she has 3 levels to it. So I started it out, and then I started level 2, ran out of room. And I had already used the next page for a different challenge, and so I had to skip a page in between and finish it here. I wish that I had realized that before I made it and done like a Dutch door or something, but I didn't, so I'll just have them separated by the Princess Bride-a-thon. This is probably my favorite spread because I bought some stickers on Etsy and they ended up not being able to get here because of the postal strike in Canada. And so my youngest daughter ended up making them for me instead. And she didn't make them to look like the ones I had purchased. She just made different characters that I showed her, and I love them. The only thing on here that she didn't draw are the little banner and the ship, and then the rest are her artwork. And again, there's the rest of the classics, and then the Read Your Bookshelf challenge. This is for the celebrating Jane Austen's 250th birthday. I know I'm not going to read all of these, but I just wanted to have them on here just in case I decided to read some that I wasn't planning on. And then the 52 book club, I put in their little printout and then made a little bingo board that I could color in. So let's see, if I read a book number 17 told in verse, then I will color in number 17. That's a funny one to pick because I probably won't read one in verse. I don't typically like those. And then this is from Reshelving Alexandria, their family challenges. They had a bunch of different challenges this year and they were all family themed. And then Jane Reads Christian Fiction Challenge, Alma's Centuries and Decades pages. And then this page is for my mom and I's reading group, the Inklings. And then this is for my American Literature course. This is where I'm keeping track of the Bible study I'm going to be doing this year. And then since I haven't finished Harry Potter yet, I had to do another page for the remaining books for Harry Potter. But I also added on the House of Humane Letters classes, and that I know she'll be doing this next summer, and the readathon for next September. And then for my husband, I'll be doing a video about this, but these are the books I've assigned for him this year. And then the Literary Life podcast, I knew that they had a lot of episodes I wanted to listen to, but I kind of forget about it. So I went through and wrote down all of the ones that I still want to listen to, their backlist. And then as they make new ones, if I haven't listened to them, then I will add them to the end. and then January starts. And I do the same kind of page for every month where I can go back and write in things at the end of the month, and I can keep track of books that I've got so I can do stickers for them, and then I write my TBR for the month. And then I have this spread for Epistolary January, which I am a co-host of. And then I've just done a few pages for putting in the books as I go along. If I read more than this, then I will add pages. If I read less than that, I can take the washi tape and stickers off and start February. So then February would start right here. So then I have all the bank pages for the year until we get to the back. And here at the back, I have my book of the year. This is something I did in my 2024 reading journal as well, where I keep track of my favorite book. And I really enjoyed it, so I did almost exactly the same spread. And then I made this page for books that I know are coming out that I want for when they're released. And so as I hear of a book, I can write it down. This is a daily reading tracker, so I can color in a little square every day that I read. That's from Reshelving Alexandria. And then this is where I started my unread shelves. So I will need to go back into here and write in the titles of the books. That's what I do. And then as I read a book, I color it in. And I had to add some pages in 2024. So I made a lot of pages in here so that I wouldn't have to make any more during the year. So hopefully I won't fill up this whole thing, but I have enough just in case. And then at the end, I just have this page where I keep the number. I just write it in messy. So that is this year's reading journal for 2025.